We need to pounce on this concept of rescission like a ninja. And what does that mean? That just means you introduce a bill to take the spending cuts found by Mr. Musk and to have Congress take the money back.
GOP Senator John Kennedy imploring his colleagues to cement Musk's DOGE cuts into law. President Trump is promising a more surgical approach to his government overhaul. For more on this, let's bring in Florida Congresswoman Laurel Lee, a Republican. Congresswoman, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I want to focus on what the president's been saying lately about DOGE, that instead of taking a hatchet, maybe DOGE should start taking a scalpel to the federal government. Do you think that's an acknowledgement that there has been some hatchet work and maybe it went too far?
President Trump has described exactly the right approach. We know that there are certain employees of the federal government that are doing essential things who we want to keep, those that are providing services to the American people that we need, the ones that we want to keep on the job. I myself worked at the Department of Justice for many years, so we know there are some government workers who do important, good work. At the same time, we've seen extraordinary examples of waste and abuse, empty government buildings, people doing things that should never have been a function of the federal government. So I believe President Trump has expressed exactly the right balance of those two things. Let's find the ones we want to keep. Let's eliminate the projects, the services, the buildings, the people who really aren't an adequate or appropriate use of the American taxpayer dollar. So I know in Congress, we are really enthusiastic about getting to work with DOGE and with President Trump to do this. The senator described exactly the process by which we can do that. We can take these recommendations, bring them back to Congress, and find the places that we can make the cuts working collaboratively with the DOGE process.
There have been a lot of lawsuits on this, and they largely follow this line that, look, Congress didn't explicitly create these cuts. They funded the money beforehand. They created the Department of Education, for example. How involved is Congress going to get here? Do you have to codify all of this stuff to make sure that it's bulletproof when it gets to the courts?
So it's not necessary to codify all of it. However, I do think that is our best long-term approach, is to find the places where we need to go back, eliminate programs, in some cases, potentially even eliminate entire government bureaucracies that we don't need. So, but this is a process. The president has tremendous executive authority to look at the way these executive branch agencies are spending money. And that also gets to the point of USAID and how important it is that we are able to look at, stop, and claw back some of that money. And what we saw this week was a district court that really exceeded the authority that it has and issued another one of these nationwide injunctions that are proliferating in our lower courts and really are an inappropriate use of what should be a very limited power. So that's something that I know we're also going to be looking at, is how we can reduce or stop that court shopping. And even the Supreme Court called it an aggregation of judicial power and judicial hubris. So we need to really look at how we can prevent that from happening.
You know, the court came in and said, look, 5-4, it was very close, but it did side and say those $2 billion in payments, about $2 billion, have to go out to USAID suppliers that have already done that work. I mean, do you think, I think the order said that it had to go out by Monday in the evening. I mean, should the administration be paying that? It's a Supreme Court order.
Well, yes, at this point, that's the order of the court. But what I think we can look at there is first, you just touched on something important, which is the Supreme Court was recognizing that some of these payments were for work already completed. So that is a different situation than trying to identify and shut down future contracts and ongoing government expenditures. And the second thing is we really need to examine this use of the courts and going to a specific individual district court judge who then is trying to enter this sort of nationwide relief. And the temporary injunction should be exactly that, a limited, narrow thing to keep the status quo while litigation can proceed and be reviewed on the merits. And here, basically, instead, it is requiring payments on these contracts. So there's a lot as Congress and the administration we can look at to make sure that this doesn't happen. But the bottom line is this: the American people have now seen the egregious examples of waste of government money that was going to projects that should never have have been funded or supported with American taxpayer dollars. And so the opportunity is here now for us to put a stop to that going forward and make sure that these kinds of things aren't happening, and if there is fraud, waste, and abuse,
Yeah.
we're finding it and we're dealing with it appropriately.
Congresswoman Laura Lee, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to see you.